start with that trip to Minnesota. The president injected himself into local politics at his rally in Duluth. The president endorsed former police officer and hockey player Pete Stauber, who was running to replace retiring Democrat Rick Nolan in Minnesota's 8th district. Here's how President Trump rallied his supporters for the Republican candidate.
We're going to win so much. Remember, we're going to win, win, win. That's what we're doing. They're going to come into Washington and say, Mr. President, please, we're winning too much. The people of Minnesota cannot stand winning so much. Please, can we take it easy? And I said, no, we're going to keep winning, winning, winning.
Esme Murphy is a reporter for our Minneapolis station, WCCO-TV. She joins us now from Duluth, where the president gave his speech. Esme, thanks so much for joining us. Why was the president in Minnesota tonight?
Well, he's in Minnesota, as you mentioned, to campaign for Pete Stauber, a former police officer, now a county commissioner, who is the Republican-endorsed candidate for the 8th Congressional District. Why does the 8th Congressional District matter? Well, this is a district that has changed parties 3 times in the last 6 years. And as you mentioned, it is currently held by Congressman Rick Nolan, a Democrat who is retiring or leaving Congress. He's actually running for lieutenant governor. So that is one of the main reasons that he was here. But also, Minnesota has 4 congressional districts out of the total of 8 that are ranked toss-ups by the Cook Political Report. And we have 2 Senate races, including what is virtually an open Senate seat, the Al Franken Senate seat. He also campaigned tonight for the candidate, the Republican who's running for that seat, State Senator Karin Housley.
So you had President Trump endorsing Republican candidate Pete Stauber tonight, who's running in Minnesota's 8th district, as we said. Who is Stauber, and what is his strategy to win the seat being left vacant by Congressman Rick Nolan?
Well, I think part of the strategy just happened tonight. You had a raucous rally, and you had the President of the United States coming here campaigning for him. If you go back 2 years, in 2016, President Trump carried the 8th Congressional District by over 15 percentage points, yet Rick Nolan, a Democrat, won. That's why Republicans are eyeing this seat with really such an appetite, because they really think they can pick this up.
Well, one Minnesota candidate who has made President Trump a focus of his campaign is former George W. Bush ethics official Richard Painter. Painter is a former Republican, now running for the Senate as a Democrat. How is he using the president to sell his candidacy?
Well, obviously, Richard Painter is somebody who has an enormous national following. I think he has almost 500,000 Twitter followers. The question is, what kind of a following does he have here in Minnesota? He is a lifelong Republican. He worked as a legal counsel to George W. Bush in the White House. And I think that's given him the credibility that is why he's so often interviewed about ethical issues involving a Republican president. The problem is he's running as a Democrat against a very well-funded Senator Tina Smith, who was the woman who was appointed to fill Al Franken's seat after he resigned. It is not clear at all that Richard Painter has the legs or the status or the following here in Minnesota. We will find out at an August primary, but right now he is way behind in fundraising. And in terms of his name recognition amongst average Minnesota voters, it's really not clear he's got the traction to make a run at Senator Smith.
Well, Minnesota is home to a sizable refugee community, many of them coming from Somalia. How is the Trump administration's zero-tolerance immigration policy, how's that being viewed in Minnesota?
Well, amongst the Somali-American population, I can tell you he is extraordinarily unpopular. I mean, he is somebody who is, his policies have been feared. People are concerned about it within the Somali community. However, if you go back to this rally here, the president mentioned immigration policies and was cheered wildly. And that's the important thing to remember, is that, you know, amongst the urban areas of Minnesota, urban areas that are represented by a Muslim member of Congress, Keith Ellison, who is actually leaving Congress to run for Attorney General, you've got that liberal base there in the cities where those kinds of policies are enormously unpopular. But then you get up here and you hear the cheers. And it's important to remember, again, that 2 years ago, President Trump almost won Minnesota. Then candidate Trump almost won Minnesota. He only lost by 50,000 votes. It's an extraordinary number. Minnesota has not voted for a Republican since 1972. President Trump actually kept talking about the fact of his narrow loss here. He brought it up 3 or 4 times, saying had it just been for one more visit, he could have carried the state, and he insists that in a couple of years he will.
Right, fascinating dynamics. Esme Murphy in Duluth for us. Esme, thanks very much.